buy into it.
Two things. One, have you seen the shit Chris Bledsoe does with the orbs? He invites the orbs.
Yes, but he's also been intercepted by Jim Semivan, who's a CIA operative.
Exactly. This is another thing. This is crazy. There's so many layers to this.
I know,
right? I know that he has been. The crazy thing about this guy is I had him on the podcast over a year ago, and he is somehow able to invite these orbs, which I personally witnessed with him on the beach a mile away from here. Me and Steve both. We filmed it. I have the video. It's real. But at the same time, there's CIA, NRO, NASA people coming and visiting him and befriending him and going to his kids' baseball game or football games.
Yeah, I know.
And literally, it is almost exactly like the Paul Bennowitz story.
I agree. And here's the problem. Anything that is of an extraterrestrial phenomenon can be simulated by these covert humans. And so all of it, the orbs, the craft, all manner of phenomena. So people are grossly underestimating covert human capabilities, which is why we go out, and when we're doing CE5 contact with a high index of suspicion and skepticism, it's like, is that ET or is that stagecraft? Because I know in great detail what those capabilities are. So and so someone who hasn't studied that, and I have the advantage of having debriefed nearly 1,000 of these whistleblowers who've been in corporation. So, but I think this is why I'm trying to share this with the public as succinctly as I can, even though it's complicated. What my Marine buddies call a clusterfuck of stuff. But it's something that really needs to be unpacked and understood so that people aren't tricked, right? So so any event that happens, I always go, well, you have to have it in your differential diagnosis or in your comparison. Was it something from another dimension that's not extraterrestrial, or a man-made, or a little more complicated subset, man-made extra-dimensional, where you could set up a stimulation by a man-made electronic system that, let's just say, tickles some other dimension and brings something into the dimension. Humans can do that. Human covert physicists that I've worked with have done that.
So how do you explain this guy being able to bring these light balls around him and bring them around? And like I was sat on the beach with him and his daughter for like 2 hours, and Steve saw this thing that was not a plane, it came out of the horizon, went that way, back that way, and then just fizzled out into nowhere. And he posts these all over his Instagram all the time. Like I understand.
I don't know. See, I haven't been with him to be able to discern.
Yeah.
It's like the old commercial. Is it real or is it Memorex? Is it endogenous ET? In other words, original ET, or is it originating from somebody piggybacking on him, right, or using them? I don't know, and so I don't know the gentleman.
I'm just saying, have you ever heard anything similar to that?
Sure, we've had in fact, I was up on our land in Virginia, near Hot Springs, Virginia. I believe it was in October or November, and we were up at about 3,000 feet. And I was there. We had a buddy, and we made a campfire, and I was doing a little meditation, and there were exactly what you described, about 15 or 20 of them that emerged and came over and below the crest in about a 40-minute period, or 40-minute period. There were more than a dozen. And I'm going, oh my God, they just get back. But so we have very similar phenomenon happen.
Yeah.
But I also know that you can stagecraft that if you're a special operations group with technologies. And this is not to try to discourage people from doing CE5 contact. I'm just saying there has to be a higher level of education and understanding. We're doing a cruise in the Caribbean April 6th to the 12th, where it's for over 200 people will be up on this big deck out in the middle of the ocean for a number of nights. We're going to webinar it if people want to tune in, and we're going to do this whole CE5 contact. I've never done it. I've always wanted to do it in the middle of the ocean.
What island?
Oh, we're going all over. It's some big cruise liner that we're reserving.
It's legit cruise ship.
Yeah, it's like 3,100 people, but we have 200, and we're going to have the upper deck cordoned off. We'll be doing this late at night.
Wow.
It'd be way fun. I've never done it. It's an experiment. We'll see what happens.
So I still have so many questions that are still on this topic. Number one, why do you think so many spooks are so interested in him and trying to push this idea, encourage him?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in that case. I don't know the man or his family.
Well, just let's hypothetically let's say it's somebody else, right? Somebody else who has some crazy ability, right? Why would those specific people be so interested in a person like that?
Well, because it's the same reason why the psionic operation teams are interested in people who have the innate capability. Right?
Okay.
And they want to see what they're doing, how they're doing it. They may want to intercept what they're doing and confuse the picture by staging some hoax events with real ones. It's not like either or. You have to think about how these guys would think. And what that motivation ultimately is, I have no idea. I just know there's some very bad actors that's swirling around the gentleman.
I'm going to write the name down on this iPad. I'm going to show it to you because I don't want to say this guy's name on the podcast because it'll get this podcast shadow banned.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see if you know who he is. Steve, blur it out or don't show it.
No.
You don't know that name?
No.
Okay.
No. Anyway, I get shadow banned all the time.
Yeah, I know.
Although, it's funny, I was on a conference call with a bunch of tech people. Said, "Oh, that's a myth. Nobody gets shadow banned." I said,
"Oh, it definitely happens.
It's ridiculous.
It definitely happens, and it happens to the UFO topic, which is very odd."
Yeah, oh no, it's not at all. I mean, if you think about, go back to that 1950 document, it's the biggest secret in the history of the United States, exceeding the secrecy of the development of the hydrogen bomb. So, the idea that the high end of the intelligence community trying to keep this secret wouldn't sanitize information, and the other naivete about most people now is that those interests are not only penetrating the tech companies, in many cases they control those tech companies. Right? Think of the corporate nexus. It's crazy. Think about BlackRock. Think about, all right, Google. I don't want to go too far into
Google was literally funded and incubated by the CIA, the NSA, and DARPA.
Yes, I know that. And so is Microsoft.
Crazy.
Yep.
Completely batshit nuts when you go and you realize that Sergey had CIA and NSA people visiting him like monthly.
Sure.
And the technology came straight from DARPA. It sounds like such a crazy conspiracy.
No, I read this. No, it makes total sense, though.
Yeah, no, it does.
It makes total sense because if you can have keystroke by keystroke surveillance of everything, right? That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted with Microsoft. That's what they wanted with the big tech companies. And ironically, the technology for doing that, from all accounts, much of it was reverse engineered from ET materials. But they didn't let out the energy systems that would eliminate poverty and human suffering and save the biosphere. They let the things out that would enable them to have the uber surveillance state we have today, mostly through the private sector. And, if people said the government were doing these things, but instead you click on an I agree on all your tech platforms, and you're giving the corporate titans who are interfacing with the intelligence community,
right,
carte blanche to everything you're doing.
It's like a cutout.
But it is a cutout.
Yeah.
It's to anyone who really analyzes this, it's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another question about our freedoms and privacy and much of the constitutional protections.
Right.
And I keep coming back to that because whether it's here or anywhere else in the world, if we don't have the rule of law, then we're in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And on this issue that then has sort of infiltrated many other sectors of our society, we don't have freedom in the rule of law. Mm-hmm. I always tell people, they brag about us having a free market economy. I go, oh, really? When the most important breakthroughs of the last 100 years in science and technology that would completely turn this planet into a paradise with free energy and all kinds of technologies have been ruthlessly suppressed up to and including killing people, right? No. We don't have a free market. We have a managed economy.
Right.
But so what the public needs to understand is we need to evolve out of that 100 years of nonsense and to this whole transformative new golden age. I mean, the new president is calling it that. Well, you're not going to do just a golden age based purely on drilling more oil out of the ground. You've got to create a golden age by letting our society advance both technologically, but also in our understanding of consciousness and spirituality, and that we're not alone in the universe, and do it in a way that doesn't cause everyone to go running for the door and jumping off bridges because we're being invaded by aliens.
I would love to see Trump do one of your CE5.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, maybe.
I want to see him meditate and kind of keep these beings.
I think, look, I'm completely nonpartisan because I have to be. I've worked through many administrations and members of Congress. Luckily, on this issue, in the Congress, it's very nonpartisan currently. The people who are interested.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, and it should be that way because it's not just the United States. I'm dealing with countries all over the world and leaders all over the world on this, frankly. I won't say which ones, but it needs to be a global understanding that transcends the usual idiotic fracture lines of murderous monkeys fighting over every little division we can find, right? I think we have to go beyond that in our thinking. And on something like this, it can't just be a partisan or even just an American issue. It really needs to be a global issue. And that's never happened. There have been attempts. You know, the original Disclosure Project event was supposed to happen at the UN General Assembly in 2001. And the UN Secretary General was threatened, Kofi Annan. He was absolutely threatened. He says, if you do this, there'll be no more funding for the United Nations. So we had to do it at the National Press Club. And his right-hand guy called me up and says, Dr. Bear, we cannot do it here at the UN. So, whoa, that was 24 years ago in May.
So, we got off track again. We were talking about CE5, and I was asking you, when you're inviting these extraterrestrials into the space in your meditation and you're interfacing with them, what is the communication?
It runs the gamut. Almost any weird thing you can imagine has happened. We've had fully materialized craft appear and disappear. We've had like that one ET that appeared between two people and then vanish. We've had unusual electromagnetic signals come through our electronic sensor systems. So like we'll have magnetometers and other equipment out there, and they will override the circuitry and start communicating through them. Very strange. And some of it's very repeatable sequences that we've recorded. Almost like Arecibo without the billion-dollar telescopes. You know, it's just
repeatable how? Like
a sequence, a pattern that repeats, that would not naturally occur or would not happen from a man-made source. And of course, many people have, it will be deep in meditation and get an override vision of a craft or a person and say, oh, I'm sensing something in the northwest sky at 60 degrees. 5 minutes later, a craft appears there and moves and comes over. So there's a lot of precognitive capabilities that develop when you develop the consciousness.
Any like direct telepathic communication?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. And what is the context of it?
It runs the gamut, but it's for many people who, I know this is my experience, is that they're making it quite clear they're here for very good reason. But a lot of it is also laden with some warning of where we are. And that our civilization is at a point where it needs to either, change directions or it's going to face some really terrible outcomes. And it's not a threat. It's just like, this is where you are. And it's sort of like the Hopi prophecy, where one line terminates and the other one goes on forever. If you know the Hopi prophecy, Native American.
Right.
It's sort of like that. That is a theme that comes up a lot. And I think we are at that point where we're going to have to transition. If we continue to think in the same paradigm of division and war and conflict, It's not like we're using machine guns and tanks. We have not only thermonuclear, but these other technologies that are covert. It's not sustainable to live like this. And nor is it sustainable for the Earth's biosphere. We have 8 billion people living like we did in the 1800s, burning stuff, right? So there's a very frequently a sort of Earth-based environmental message that comes through about the dangers, not only geopolitically, of endless war with these technologies, but also what we're doing to the oceans and the atmosphere and genetic mutations and cancer rates.
Yeah.
Then all of this is a consequence of having suppressed for 100 years breakthroughs in technology that would have moved us onto another path.
Right.
So that's what we call the documentary The Lost Century.
Yeah.
Because there's a lost century of social and technological evolution, but also with that, sort of spiritual evolution. Because what happens when a world no longer is in want and fighting over scarce resources? I think the work week will drop to 10 or 15 hours a week. People will have extraordinary amount of time for creative pursuits and the pursuit of higher states of consciousness and meditative and what have you. Hopefully not everyone's spending all their time on YouTube looking at kitty cats playing the piano, but that might happen too. But
I think there's two main drivers. There's fear of death, and I think there's sex. I think those are the two main drivers of our civilization and where we're going right now. There's a great quote from this show Westworld, where he's saying the human intellect is like peacock feathers. The human psyche is like peacock feathers. It's an elaborate mating call. Everything from the Mona Lisa to the Eiffel Tower to the Brooklyn Bridge, the Statue of David. All it is an elaborate mating call. Some of the best creations and pieces of artwork in human history, and that's sort of what drives our innovation and our
part of it.
Our drive to make more money, to get better things, to drive a nicer car, to have a bigger house. And it seems like if we didn't have that, if we were genderless and we didn't fuck each other to reproduce, then maybe we would be on a different trajectory.
Well, I don't think it's either or either. I mean, I think you can have a body and a planet that's physical and also pursue higher states of consciousness and spirituality. I don't think the asceticism is the way. I don't think you deny the one, but you add to that a higher conscious understanding and spirituality. And I think that is the balance. There's sort of like these inherent tensions and contradictions that exist in the modern era and has for many, many times. But one of the features you mentioned earlier of the P3 or psionic operators, when you mentioned that some of this innate ability, it harkens back to the Aboriginals in Australia that had what was called dream time. And they would literally have lucid dreams at night, communicate with each other, and have meetups with no telephones or smoke signals or anything. And so in many civilizations that we would dismiss as primitive, that was just part of the natural order. Western civilization, coming into science and through the scientific revolution, and also rejecting the superstitions and excesses of the Middle Ages and whatnot, sort of threw the baby out with the bathwater. So I see a time where we'll go forward as a high-tech civilization, but at the same time an increasingly conscious and enlightened civilization, both. And I think that's the sort of balance where you become a very advanced civilization because primacy is with your conscious evolution. The world is as you are, as it says in the Vedas. The world we see is a reflection of what our level of consciousness and thoughts are. And so I think that can evolve. There's no reason why we have to be stuck in the current state of things. Now, change is difficult. Most people don't like change or adventures. I love adventures and change, but it's something that if we stay away, there's like the old Chinese saying, unless we change directions, we're likely to end up where we're going. And I'd say, look, where are we going? You're going to hell in a handbasket right now. Not just geopolitically, but in terms of tensions and wars, but also with the earth and the environment and poverty. You know, the Economist last couple of years ago had an article: 3 billion people on Earth don't even have energy to cook their food. So they're cutting out the brush and making deserts appear and cutting down the rainforest. 3 billion of the 8 billion. So there's no way to have a peaceful world or a just world with the zero-sum game of the current energy system. This becomes very clear. But, as Patrick Bet-David told me the other day, if you bring these out, there are so many powerful interests. You're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars in aggregate impact. So, and that was the mistake of 100 years ago. If these technologies had been brought out when there were only 2.5 billion people on the Earth, and very few of those people had electricity and cars, it would have been a natural evolution. Now, we're either headed towards a very bad situation globally, geopolitically and environmentally, geophysically, or we have to bring these out, which will be, admittedly, very disruptive. You know, talk about a disruptive technology. So how do we do that? Well, it's going to have to be very smart and very managed. And so these are the complexities that, to be honest with you, world leaders and the President and the National Security Council need to be discussing urgently. And what I'm concerned about is that it seems that in the next year or two, this is all going to get disclosed. And when I meet with senior government officials, which I do quite often, they don't know anything about the subject, or what they do know has been some blended false information that has gaslit them in the wrong path.
Yeah.
And this frightens me. I mean, because knowledge is power, and if you don't have it, you're going to be manipulated into all the wrong decisions. And I think we need to have our leaders here and abroad brought up to speed on this in a serious way, which is, I mean, what I should be doing, and I'm trying to do. What I really ought to do is retire, but I'm tired. I'm getting old.
But go relax on that 600 acres.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we do. I take time for that. And I work out a lot. And, you know, I was almost killed in that 15 minutes ago. Oh, good. Oh, yeah. What happened? Someone saw through the seat of my bicycle, mountain bike, and it snapped off. And my left leg came off. My left foot came off. The bones were in the air. This shoulder was ripped off. My abdomen split open. I had 4 surgeries. What? Oh, yeah. I even believe the things I've had happen to me.
Holy shit.
It was bad. It was the worst I've had. And, you know, in the 90s, I had 3 people on my team killed. The 2 by electronically induced cancers, and the former CI director, Bill Colby, who was going to help us bring these energy technologies out. They just wet worked him in the river south of D.C., made it look like an accident. So, you know, this is serious stuff.
They literally tried to kill you on your bike.
Oh, I think it was more of a speed bump, slow me down. It was 3 weeks after I got back from the black site in the chopper, where I filmed the underground opening.
Yeah.
Where some of the Lockheed objects come up from an underground facility and are tested, and I handed that over to the Senate Intelligence.
You gotta be so paranoid, man.
No, I'm not. Not at all. No.
All these people that you've worked with have been whacked?
No, your paranoid implies that you'd be afraid of all this. But I think the saving grace, even though I was raised an agnostic atheist, of having had that near-death experience when I was 17.
You're not afraid of death?
I'm not afraid of that. Because
Really?
I don't like being tortured. I don't want to be injured. I don't want to have a life of misery, which is what they've made my life a miserable thing. But, you know, no. I mean, being without this, you know, physical body and being in the worlds of the conscious light that I've experienced, no, that's a beautiful thing. I don't have a death wish, but I'm also not afraid. I mean, it's sort of like the old Shambhala warriors of old.
If they were
spirit warriors.
Why have they? I mean, I would imagine, like, all this stuff that you're doing, and you've been doing this for so freaking long.
Yeah.
I can't believe they haven't tried to take you out yet.
Well,
I mean, other than the bicycle incident.
Oh, I had metastatic malignant melanoma at the same month that a member of Congress and my right-hand assistant got cancers. I almost died. I was in 96, 7. But, yeah. I think Colby killed, 95, 96. Bill Colby, the CIA director. But
How was he killed?
well, he allegedly was out canoeing on a
Yeah, I've heard this
run,
story.
but his son thought he committed suicide. But he was working with a colonel and with a member of my team to hand over one of these 0-point quantum generators with about $50 million in seed money so we can get it out, open source it, and get it out to the public. And the week he was going to meet with a member of my board, they found him floating. It's an unsolved murder, but we know what happened. His best friend came to my friend's funeral, Sherry's funeral, and said we both had terrible losses. But yeah, look back.
Going back to the angels and demons stuff, have you heard of the Virginia, Brazil incident?
Yes, I have.
That thing smelled like sulfur, and in the Bible it talks about demons smelling like sulfur.
Well, here's the other problem. I'm not an expert on that case. The question is, was it ET? Was it human induced? Or was it from another dimension? And
have you ever seen anything like that? You know all about the alien species, right? You know all about the catalog. The guy said there are 69 different ones.
Oh yeah, and our team has had experiences with a huge variety.
And you've never seen anything like that one with the red eyes, the Virginia.
No. And one of the questions I always have is, given what I know about what human electromagnetic field experimentation is done. There's a physicist I'm working with, and he's down near the Redstone House. Yeah, big place in the He has his own skip, like and lower level of his house is also a skip. Secure compartment information facility. And I mean, these guys have created like toroidal electromagnetic systems where they will tap into the ninth ring of hell or whatever, and some creature will be 3D running around the lab.
What?
And it sounds absolutely batshit crazy, and it is, but it's true. So whatever you can imagine, Ben Rich, the week he died, was talking to a friend of mine, Jim Goodall, a well-known aerospace historian, and said, and Jim was pushing on this issue about what Lockheed Skunk said. He said, well, anything you can imagine that you've seen on Star Trek, we've already done at the Lockheed Skunk Works, and it's not at Area 51. It's out in the desert underground. And that is true. I've been over that facility. I mean, not long, but right before I was critically injured. But so there are people who have surfaced describing some of those. Well, what does that mean? It means that the capabilities of these over human beings exceed anything. And this is why people say, well, you're the biggest skeptic I ever heard. You don't believe it? I said, well, I'm not saying there aren't genuine extraterrestrial, non-human intelligence, but there's all this other stuff. And all this other stuff is really complicated. And it makes sense once you unpack 70 or 80 years of super advanced engineering and science and technology from studying this area of physics. And one of the big mistakes everyone makes is they don't give enough credit to the genius of the people who work in those programs. This guy I just referred to, he's redacted in what we're making available to the public, but he's not redacted for some other folks. Highest IQ, one of the highest IQs anyone ever known. And what I found is that people of very high capabilities, they're tapped either right out of college or in high school and brought in because they have such amazing aptitude. And there's a process for screening for that. And it's a real process. And they're looking for people with extraordinary talents and IQs and abilities. So I always tell people the smartest people I've ever met are not at Harvard, MIT, or Caltech, or whatever. They're in covert operations and corporate and some government. And those guys are amazingly brilliant. And they're highly incentivized to study this and figure out different applications. And I think people grossly underestimate that. And because they underestimate it, they're constantly being deceived and tricked by human phenomena, human events, and weird stuff, and thinking it's something it isn't. And that's what happened with the skinwalker. So there was an innate phenomenon there. I don't think it was extraterrestrial. I think it was extra-dimensional. And a bunch of guys operating with Robert Bigelow and the intelligence community set up some electronics that ran the rancher off. So they forcibly bought it virtually. And then they set up all these weird electromagnetic phenomenon there, and I know how they did it. And I had someone who was embedded in that team who described it with the Bradshaw Ranch near Sedona. Recently there was someone who works with Elizondo on a podcast talking about, that's an alien, but I've had my people scouted out. They're guys all dressed in black down below a hill, and it's a complete black site. I don't know if it's CIA or corporate, but so this happens all the time. If you have an area that has an innate, somebody say a portal, with an innate phenomenon going on, those will get taken over and turned into a black site human, and then the public gets gaslit and deceived about all the phenomena. It's more trickery.
You're saying that they will deliberately use their tricks to make it seem like there's some crazy fuckery going on there, and it's some sort of interdimensional portals with witches and all that stuff, and they can buy it.
Terrifying.
And they can keep doing that stuff.
They ran off the people in the Bradshaw Ranch, same thing, Skinwalker. Now that it's a new owner, I don't know him, but I knew that people who got it after the rancher was terrified and run off. And they can do things through normal electric wires, power lines that they can put a signal down, and all of a sudden some creepy thing happens, and an apparition to appear and disappear. This is the high end of what we call the stagecraft or tradecraft. Stagecraft. Yeah, staging things. And one of the problems with ufology and with this whole subject is that you really can't begin to even make a judgment call on what you're looking at, right, unless you unpack what the human capabilities are. And then you can begin to put it into the categories and get some discernment. But it's a very difficult thing to do. And in 1991, I was at a conference, and a CIA guy, old guy, he looked like the cigarette man. It's that show, X-Files. They loved some of those episodes they took from my early work. And we were walking along, and he said, "Let's walk there." And he said, "Look, the truth is so much stranger than in fiction. We can sell the fiction, and people will believe it. But if you tell people the truth, they won't believe it, and it's less believable than fiction." And it is. So that's been a real conundrum. Fiction has to make sense. Truth doesn't. Yeah, exactly. And the truth on this is...
in half a mile, keep left at the wall.
Because it has the ability to then confuse the picture, but also create this specter of fear, where the long-term goals can be fulfilled. Is that disclosure. I wrote a paper in 1999 called, it's on our website, "When Disclosure Serves Secrecy." Meaning
keep left at the fall.
And if this issue gets disclosed the way it currently is on track to be, it'll be a war of the worlds, panic in the aisle. It'll be 1,000 times worse than COVID.
The way it's on track to be disclosed.
Yes, where you have the people who keep going up to Congress and the White House and other places and conflating man-made, frightening things like abductions and villages being blown up with extraterrestrial threat or NHI threat. And they're deliberately commingling. No one is making this discernment between a bunch of psyops and covert technologies masquerading as ET. No one is doing that. In fact, the dominant paradigm is to call all of it one thing. And in that calling it one thing, it makes people conclude there is a threat and we need to fight it. So let's go to DEFCON 1. Let's go to Independence Day, the movie. Let's go to War of the Worlds. So I think this manipulation is 99% of what people hear. And I don't really, honestly, right now, if you were to put me under a sodium truth serum, I don't.
I got some.
But do you? Oh, good. Go for
Steve,
it.
lock the doors.
All right. I really don't see that right now, as things stand as of this moment, that there is a critical mass of people who are able to come forward and not be captured, let's call it, by that narrative. Trapped by that narrative. Now, it even gets more spooky when you start dealing with senior people in government who have not been read into this, who are brand new to this. And we'll go in with information, and then right after us will be a disinformation team that goes in.
Yeah.
Like clockwork. So, and I'm a private civilian, say.
So, you were alluding to earlier when you were mentioning Elizondo. He is behind this whole threat narrative.
It's mixed. I mean, he's actually evolving a little bit off of that because he needs to, and that's been exposed. But I think one of the reason he initially emerged was to be sure that 2 or 3 major false narratives came out. One, we don't have anything that's man-made that could be this, when 80% of what people are saying are man-made, covert. Okay, that was one message. The other was that it's a threat to the national security, which it is, but not from out there in space. It's the threat is within. I mean, right? But he was
the
rogue secret government organization is the threat. It's treasonous, it's traitorous, it's murderous, it's unconstitutional, it's criminal. So that narrative is to say what I just described in disclosure, search, secrecy. Yes, this is real. It's all coming out. The UFOs are real, which everybody's known forever. But they're a threat. And we don't have anything to comply like that. Now, luckily, in the last 2 or 3 years...
Does Elizondo say that we don't have anything like this?
Yes, he did initially. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
And neither is Grush, and neither is Fravor and others. But that was something that I was forcefully in the public saying that is a falsehood. And I would go to senators and congressmen and say, no, that is wrong. And that is a lie, and a damnable lie. Because if you believe that, then a priori, you have to think that all the horrible things that have happened have also been at the hands of the EPs, when they've been at the hands of a CIA Special Operations team, right? Or SO, Special Operations.
Right.
So I think that was the thing that concerned me the most. Now, I'm hoping, I don't have any grievance against any individual, honestly. I mean, mostly, I don't know them. I'm more concerned about the human future, the human consciousness, being polluted with a false narrative that leads us into this dystopian future of endless war and expanded war into space and all this stuff. Because that's how you get to Armageddon. That's how you get to a catastrophic conclusion. So that's my big concern. And I think this is why I don't care who you are. I'm going to speak the truth about it. There's an old saying, I speak the truth whether it gives you counsel or offense. That's the ER doctrine. If you got a brain tumor, I'm not going to tell you have a migraine. Right? So that's just me. But, and it's very controversial, very unlikable.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not running for mayor of crazy town ufology either. Yeah. So I couldn't care about that.
Sure.
I care about what the truth is, but also how the truth is articulated that doesn't result in some just furtherance of the agenda of the secret group. Because what would be, this is their dream, is to let this come out and pivot the whole world onto a path of needing Big Brother to run endless war and offensive and defensive operations against NHI, right? That's been the plan. And I, right now, I will say that the weight of the thrust of how this is being brought forward, if you get media reports and social media, that is the thrust of what's happening. We're trying to bend the curve towards something truthful, but also a positive outcome for humanity and for the United States, because the United States is the crown jewel. in these covert secret programs, and many of our big corporations are tied into these in a compartmented special projects divisions, and a lot of them. So I think we have to figure out how to do this, but this needs to come out where it's, and I basically in here there's a, you're going to laugh, it's a draft speech for the president or other world leaders to get that I've written.
Why would I laugh about that?
Like I was speaking over I said, but it has to be, this coming out, you cannot speak about this with, well, let's just blow them out of the sky, right? That kind of thing. So, this is dangerous, the kind of talk that attends the disclosure discussions. It leads to a catastrophic outcome for the Earth and humanity. And there's one other risk that's a little bit more ominous. And that is, there are 3 different people I'm working with that don't know each other that have been in comm centers, communication centers, where somehow they have intercepted communications from NHI.
Extraterrestrials.
Yeah. That they're getting quite fed up with the fact that we are taking their technologies and using it against them, and that has reached the point where we are a threat, not just to ourselves, but to out there. So people are grossly underestimating how those covert programs are threatening Earth, because not that these civilizations are hostile, but they certainly are not going to let a rogue group of psychopaths threaten other worlds. So if we don't get this under control, it'll have to be brought under control. But the worst case scenario, everyone says, why don't the aliens just fix this? I said that would be the worst case scenario, because if that happens, it'll be portrayed as an alien invasion.
Wouldn't the aliens...
And they're too smart for that.
Yeah, the aliens are smart. They're way smarter than us. They have to be.
IQ's 400 and north of 400.
So why wouldn't they just quietly go after those people and shut them down?
There'd be no way to do that without it also being portrayed by their lackeys in government and the media as an alien invasion. So
I'm saying quietly do it, so
there's no way to quietly do this, my friend. I mean, if you start looking at the map in here and the list of corporations, sites, facilities, the trillions of dollars involved with this, that ain't going to happen.
In half a mile, keep left at the fork.
Now, humans can get our, and here's we need to fix our own mess here, and there's no reason we can't. I think it's sort of a weird cosmic codependency to think that someone from out there
left at the fork.
Land here to fix our problems. I mean, how well did that work in Afghanistan, right? Oh, we're going to go in and nation build, and they're right back to warlords and nonsense. It's got to come from the people, right? Now, I don't necessarily say the leaders, the people. The people will lead, the leaders will have to follow. But we become very passive. And I think we have to not be so passive. I think the people need to speak up, stand up, articulate, and hopefully exhort our leaders to do the right thing. I grew up in I was born in 1955, so I remember I grew up in the South very poor. And, my grandmother's Cherokee, my father was half Native. They were called half-breeds. And I have a twin sister who looks very Native. And, that there was Jim Crow in the South. There was still segregated water fountains, all that. Mm-hmm. And I remember how weird that was. I mean, I was 4, 5, 6, and I'd go to a water fountain where there was no line, and a little old lady would grab me and say, "Don't drink out of that one. That's for," I think they said, colored people or something like that.
Yeah.
And I went, because my parents were not all racist. I went, but is the water different? It was like this magical system, this racist system. And I saw that evolve. And I had an African-American girlfriend in high school who got run over by a bunch of racists who did not like that. And, but that all changed, not because the president and Congress changed it. It happened because of Bayard Rustin and Martin Luther King Jr. And there was a movement that made that happen, right? So I think people forget that big changes in society rarely come from the top down. It comes from the people up.
Sure.
And this is not that lesson is lost on most people today, because most people just sit around looking at their phones and don't do anything. But I remember that era, and I remember how different. I mean, things aren't perfect now with race relations, but boy, it's a big difference from the 50s and 60s when I was a kid. And imagine having an African American girlfriend in North Carolina in 72 or 3, you know. So I think that, you know, progress can happen, but it's a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifice, and people have to stand up and be heard. And that's part of what the whole disclosure movement has been about. That when I started, people don't realize that we started the whole disclosure movement in the 90s. It's now, even the word disclosure is used by the New York Times. But we started that in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah. Right. Now, obviously, I think you've said it before, but you believe that people, organizations, whether, I don't know if you were talking about the government or if you're talking about these rogue groups, have possession or captive alien bodies.
Yeah, they have living ones as well.
They have living ones. And who is this that is this the government, or is this rogue organization?
No, it's a rogue government. It's a secret government, and those are in places that need to be, let's call, liberated. And
do you know where they are?
I'm not precisely. I have a very good idea. So one of the things we have mapped are the underground entry points, and then the connectivity. Say you have the Edwards complex, and then you have east of there what's called the Ant Hill, and those are entry points into underground subterranean facilities or bases. But they connect underground to Nellis and out to the northern net. So it's an underground. That's what they call an anthill. If you go to an ant farm, you go in and there are all these connections, right? So we have a very good idea of where those are, and some of the whistleblowers we're working with know even more. And that needs to be provided to people in the U.S. government so that they can get control of those. And there are some very brave men I'm working with who have been special forces guys who are prepared to go in and get those facilities under control, and also to liberate those people.
That's crazy too. If these things are so smart and so advanced, how are they going to let one of their own be captive by us?
Well, that's a lot of people say that, but just because you're advanced doesn't mean terrible things don't happen. I mean, technically you could throw a bunch of spears by cavemen into the rotors of a Sikorsky helicopter and jam it up and have a crash. So bad things happen. Of course, being a trauma guy, you just see the weirdest things happen. So just because they're very advanced, people conflate that with being infallible.
Right.
Well, God's infallible, but certainly no individual person or civilization is infallible. So this concept that just because they're extremely high-tech and bright mean they're infallible, no. Now, is it that often that it happens? No, it doesn't. The one site I was over, I was told there were 1 or 2 ET craft per year down. And I went over 2 black sites. And so, 2 to 4 a year over a big area of that part of the desert. So it's not like they're dropping out of the sky like flies, is what I'm saying. It's still terrible. But then remember, we have sites like that all over the world. Outback of Australia, South America, all around. And it's still tragic, and it shouldn't be happening. And when there are ones that are living, they just don't flat out kill them. They would prefer to interrogate them and keep them. And so my understanding is that there are a number of ETs that are in captivity and are still living. One guy euphemistically called them refugees. I think not. They're prisoners. But, so I think that is another humanitarian effort that should happen at some point where they're freed.
And how many different versions or species of these things do you think we have? And have you ever seen any of them in person?
I've not seen living ones in captivity in those spaces, no. I've seen ETs, but they're not, to my knowledge, I've never heard anyone describe the variety of them. I know that in the crash retrievals, now we have 122 documented crash retrieval events that are part of them are in here. But in our archive, DPI, archive.com, all of them are in here. And they range from ones that are a foot and a half tall to some that are 8-10 feet tall, and all kinds of different, we would just say, genetic expressions. But they seem to all have a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs. But
Interesting.
But beyond that, there's infinite variety.
What about the mantis ones?
Well, that one that was the healer, when you see him, it's sort of a triangular head, and they're known as really extraordinary healers. I mean, they have some amazing healing capabilities.
That one right there?
This guy.
That's the mantis?
Yeah. What some people would call it, sort of a triangular head. You see it, it's sort of, you can outline it. If I had my cursor, I could put. But remember, this is in complete darkness in the wilderness up on a mountain in Arizona. This was actually in Oracle, ironic, O-R-A-C, like Oracle, Arizona. Yeah, a couple years ago. And so that's, and we love doing that. That's my real passion, is going out and the experimentation and using consciousness and remote viewing to make contact and see what happens. And a lot of it varies on the group, because if there's someone not on the page or someone there who's filled with superstition and fear, they won't show up because they don't want to be around dumb people that haven't figured that out.
Now,
sorry, but if you haven't figured that out, they're going, why are you out there with us? Go home.
Yeah.
And go look at Stranger Things or something.
How far have you gotten in your investigation into those beings that you talked about and studied in your Sirius documentary? The small beings, and I think you talked about Gary Nolan worked with you on that.
Yeah, Gary Nolan received a lot of money right after we gave him that genetic sample, and he altered the results of it. So we don't know what that creature is.
He received a lot of money?
Yeah, I think it was $3.4 million from the Pentagon, and then he is now contracting with the intelligence community to show UAP injuries, which is just a psyop. Yes, of course. I mean, the UAP injuries are all man-made. But of course, you get someone like him.
It's the man-made versus engineered?
Of course. But you put this stink on the ETs when it's something we've done, right? So, unfortunately, I think that went sideways very badly. So, to this day, we don't know what that thing was. Now, he published a report saying it was a deformed fetus, even though the top geneticist or doctor who does hormone malformation said no way, because it was global. It had growth plates consistent, equivalent of a 6-year-old human, but it was only about 6 inches tall. And so we don't know what it was. It could have been something that is a completely unknown species on Earth. It could have been something that's a result of both Earth and non-human interactions that are ancient in that part of the Atacama Desert in Chile. Yeah. There are accounts of these UFOs being seen, and these small creatures. The adult ones are like a foot and a half tall. But to this day, we actually don't know what it is. I mean, I never said it was ET. I said we don't know what it is, but it's certainly not human. So what was published by Gary Nolan and those guys, and I've had the top geneticists in the world tear apart their data, says totally hoax. It's totally academic. Really? So, yes. But this is why you asked about being paranoid. I'm careful, but I'm not paranoid, because I've had so many people who could go on the path of finding the truth, and they either get blackmailed and or both bribed, given a lot of money. And next thing you know, everything goes sideways. And so, I've seen that dozens, hundreds of times in 35 years. So it makes you a little bit cynical, I guess, or skeptical. Mm-hmm. So, but no, he completely started out as an honest person. I know that, and when I first met in 2012, I think. But at this point, man, that's got to be cleaned up. It's a mess.
What about those mummies that were in Peru? The mummies that were shown to Mexican Congress by Jamie
Jaime Maussan. Those were actually from Peru and from a cave. Right. And we know. I know the researchers, the scientists who looked into that. I've never been down there. but it was handled like you would handle. There's a lot of buffoonery that goes on with the UFO subculture. It was handled in a poor way, but I actually think the actual mummies are legitimate, very old, thousands of years old, non-human species. Now, how they got there, where they're originally from, but these are not hoaxes. I've seen the cross sections, I've seen the CAT scans, but unfortunately, I was going to go down there with the team this past spring, last year, and try to do a scientific expedition, but there was too much interference from other people, and I pulled out of that. But there needs to be a whole series. You have to do ancient DNA, right? Which means it's different from DNA you pull on a live person, and it's a whole different technique. You need to have really good forensic dissection, partial dissections, and you need to have every one of them CAT scanned, and then the metal objects on them have to go through a very sophisticated, expensive analysis to see if the atomic, let's just say whether it was of Earth origin metal or from out there, and you can do that. But this is a very complex and expensive and time-consuming endeavor that would run into the hundreds of thousands to a couple $1,000,000 to do, right? Properly. Now, there's never that kind of, the only funding like that in the UFO subculture is to fund things that are disinformation operations. Fact. So that has not happened yet. Maybe it will at some point. But my assessment of it, I actually visited a man in Utah who had acquired several of these, but they were still in Peru. And he gave me a lot of information that when I saw it, he was a scientist. And I went, yeah, these are real. Now, their origins, I don't know. And no one's, to my knowledge, done a proper DNA. Someone attempted to, I think it was a Russian archaeologist, but it was not done properly. I don't have faith in it. Because it's very different when you take DNA from either someone recently deceased or living. Sure. How you run that is very different than what's called ancient DNA. And ancient can be even 30 years old. Because anyway, it breaks down in a way that to get a correct genetic code read on it is a completely esoteric and specialized area of genetic sequencing. It isn't like regular genetic sequencing. So, I would know how to direct that scientific project. I haven't had time. And then when we were going to go down, there was all kinds of nonsense and theatrics and trickery. And I said, I'm out of here until this gets cleaned up. Yeah.
So, what's on the horizon for you as far as like your whistleblowers, and what do you think is going to happen, and in what time frame, as far as getting these people like Jake in front of Congress and getting this stuff actually not going into a skip and then disappearing, and actually seeing something happen, something tangible take place, and guide this whole thing in the right direction?
Well, you make a good point. One of my concerns is this comes out and gets spun as a threat, like I was talking about, or it simply goes back into the black pit of Calcutta. In other words, it just gets put back into a black project. It begins to surface, it gets slammed back down again. Both could happen. Hopefully neither do. But so what I'm continuing to do, I'm going from here back up to, well, I'm actually giving a lecture here in St. Petersburg.
Oh, really?
And then I'm going to be going back to D.C. for some meetings with Congress folks, and then I'll be back down here to meet with a general.
Oh, really?
Who is, yes, and who had been at one point the national security advisor for a president. So, we're trying to still work the system and get the more important trajectory, I think, is going to be empowered people through an executive order to take all of these whistleblowers we have, protect them, and then get their information, and then get those old legacy corrupt programs under control. And that's the real plan. And whether we can make it happen, we're going to give it the all-out effort this year. And I think it can. I actually, I think there are people in the new administration very open to this. I don't think they have much information. I mean, I've met with some of the incoming prospective cabinet members already, and but I don't think there's yet a consensus on the path to take, and unfortunately, a lot of them have been targeted with false information. So it's complicated, just like members of Congress have had that happen. The best I can do is give the information, the evidence, and the advice, and see how they carry the ball. In the meanwhile, I actually think that they need to be hearing from the public. You know, the public can get this and say, "Oh, these recommendations, these executive orders, and what kind of do it." You know, just write a letter to your members. And a lot of people don't do that. They get very old-fashioned. But I mentioned this earlier. I've heard from so many people in Washington who are elected representatives and their constituents. But most people, this is entertainment. It's just.
Yeah, that's the other thing about it that we haven't talked about. We've been talking about the PSYOP within a PSYOP angle of this whole thing the whole time, and the counterintelligence, disinformation, and strategic deception. But like, you have to layer on top of that, this whole subject is a business for people too.
Yep. Yeah.
There's people that build their careers off talking about this stuff and doing all kinds of crazy shit.
I lost my career over it. Yeah, I've given up $15 or $20 million.
I mean careers based on the topic itself.
Oh, of course, and the scarier and more false it is, the more money there is.
Yeah.
Because they're going to open every door to a book publisher or a big movie deal if the information is BS, right? Mm-hmm. But it's scary. So that's the other thing I discovered is that, you know, we'll put something like this out on print on demand, but HarperCollins will give someone $1 million contract, put out a book that's full of nonsense and disinformation designed to scare the hell out of people. Gee, I wonder how that happens.
Yeah.
So this is something I just accept as the way things are right now. It might change.
Well,
and we've started our own podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, tell people where they can learn more about what you're doing and your website and all that stuff.
Yeah. So. You'll be able to get this now on, our site, the briefing document material. We have a podcast that we've started. We've only done, I think, 4 or 5 episodes.
That documentary on Jonathan Wigand, I'd heard of him, any of the backstory that you described.
Oh.
Professor of religion and religious studies, but do you personally believe in God?
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what we do in my field. In religious studies, it's a multidisciplinary field, and so we're academics, and we don't actually, I don't tell my students what I believe because it's helpful. We're learning about religion. I'm not advocating religion. But I personally, yes, believe in God. But it's not part of my field. It's, we have atheists. Some of the best people in my field are atheists.
Oh, okay.
So it's not being a minister or a priest or something like that. I actually did get a master's degree along with priests in formation, Jesuits in formation, from the Jesuit School of Theology, which was affiliated with UC Berkeley. It is part of the Graduate Theological Union, which is very similar to Harvard Divinity School, but Berkeley's version. And then I went on to get a PhD from Syracuse University in religious studies, which is a field of international academics who study religion. A lot of people are religious who study religion, but a lot of them are not as well. So that's the first thing, is I just want to get clear of what the method is. And I've been a person who studied Catholic history for my whole career until I moved over into studying belief about UFOs. And I took my method with me to study that. And we could talk about how I got into studying UFOs, because I think that's interesting. But we take the method to study UFOs, which means we don't have to believe in UFOs. I'm not out to prove that, UFO crash debris are real, and this is the subject of American Cosmic, my first book on UFOs, but not my first book. So I think that's important to know, is that I'm not out here crying for like government disclosure or whether or not these materials are actually real. I'm out to study the impact this belief has on populations of people, mainly people in the United States, but globally now.
Did your early childhood have anything to do with your interest in religion and religious studies? Did you have a very religious childhood and upbringing?
Okay, so
too fast. Did your studies and your work at all influence your outlook or your worldview on that?
Yeah, I do think that people are impacted by how they were brought up and also what happens around them in culture. So, of course, I'm not exempt from that. That said, I didn't grow up in a particularly religious household at all. My parents were what I would call, I'm from California, Northern California, and it was and still is an eclectic culture where there's New Age beliefs and things like that. So my parents were pretty eclectic. My father was Irish Roman Catholic. My mother was pretty secular Jewish. And they were interested in a lot of things, philosophy. So we did have a library of books about philosophy, and I read those as a kid. And I was very interested in religion and philosophy. And I did make the decision to study this pretty young. So yes, I think I was really interested in how people would have pretty extraordinary experiences, and these would shift their lives, and I was interested in why. Also have to understand that I went to graduate school during the late 90s, which was the time period of the dot-com boom. And so I'm in California, technology is just kind of flourishing at this time, and I'm seeing that the infrastructure is changing the way people believe in their religion. And so the digital infrastructure, and especially media technology like Star Wars and things like that, people are beginning to have these, I would call them almost like mystical beliefs about things like the Force is with you, and it was impacting their religious beliefs. And so when I went to school, not only did I study ancient texts about different religions, but I also studied the ways in which people took their own beliefs and they incorporated, the lexicon of Star Wars into those beliefs as well. And those were part of the whole landscape. So I really focused on technology and religious beliefs. That was like my focus all throughout studying Catholic history and also studying what I study now.
I'm sure you studied religion and belief for a long time before you ever even thought of the UFO phenomenon.
Yes.
What was it that introduced you to this? Like, what was the moment like when you first got introduced to this and started to look into it? And what were the biggest connections between the logic of the UFO phenomenon compared to early Christianity?
Right. That's a good question. This happened in late 2011, 2012. And I had just finished a very major project that culminated in a book about the Catholic doctrine of purgatory, which is an afterlife destination for souls who don't quite make it to heaven, but are definitely not going to hell. Okay? And this doctrine kind of had fallen off the map for Catholics, and I wanted to know why. And so I did a lot of study of old materials in archives, manuscripts, and things like that. And so I also talked about Catholic popular culture and how that shifted this belief. And so at the end of that, I had a long catalog of reports of aerial phenomena from 1400, 1600, 1700, European Catholicism, that I didn't quite, in different languages, by the way, and I didn't quite understand what they were about. A lot of times people believe that these were either angels, sometimes flying houses, sometimes souls from purgatory. And so I kept these, and I knew that they were really interesting, but I didn't quite make the connection. I thought, I wonder what this is about. So I finished my book. My book was in press, and I'm on to the next book. But I'm thinking that it's not going to be about that stuff. It's going to be about a Catholic bishop who was one of the first Catholic bishops in the States. And I show a friend of mine this catalog, and he said, "What do you think of these reports?" And he looked through the reports, and he said, "Oh, these look like Steven Spielberg films. I mean, it looks like UFOs." And I thought he was silly, because I was a person who scoffed at this belief. It was a coincidence, but there was a conference in my town for people who were experiencers, UFO experiencers. So I went to that, and I heard them talk about their experiences, and I saw that these experiences that they were having were like an exact match with the experiences that I had cataloged from hundreds of years ago up to the present. And I recognized that this was a continual pattern, and it kind of blew my mind at the time. It's like, wow. So I did a little more exploring, and I started to look at primary source material from Catholic experiences, like from saints, like Teresa of Avila, Saint Francis of Assisi. And when I started to read the primary source material, I saw that it was also very similar to what you would see in John Mack's book, because at this point I read John Mack's book, Abduction. And it literally, these experiences of the saints could be other chapters in his book. And so at the time, I knew Jeff Kreifel, but he's a professor at Rice University who looks into this type of thing. And I told him, I said, "Have you seen this?" And he at first said, "No, Diamond, no, I don't think so." And then I took some of the stuff that I had translated and sent it to him. I said, "They're talking about little beings and aerial phenomena and other things that happened in John Mack's book," and he was blown away too. And that was the beginning of my writing about UFOs and looking into modern day reports of UFOs. And honestly didn't think I was going to experience what I did when I went into studying UFOs. I thought it was going to be a natural progression of moving from, using this method that I learned, moving from Catholic history into modern day reports of UFOs. Honestly thought it was going to be pretty easy to do. But when I got into the community of studying UFOs, I immediately saw that there was a lot of government misinformation, truthfully. And I also, met high-level scientists that were studying in these programs. And I didn't actually, they wanted to know what I knew, by the way. They were interested in my field. They thought that they could learn from me. So this is what happened, and this is how I wrote my first book about UFOs and my second book too. So
fasting is a powerful healing tool that activates our body's natural repair mechanisms. In this video, I'm going to make the case as to why fasting is the cure to the ailments that you face, the future ailments that I face, and that we face as a human civilization. So stick around to the end as I uncover all the details that are going to prove that fasting will change your life for the better. I'm Dr. Nick Zarowski. Thanks for hanging out with me in this video today. Let's go ahead and dive in. The first topic that we have to talk about that's critically important when it comes to fasting, and as to why it's so powerful, is the topic of autophagy. When you're fasting, your body's going to enter this state of autophagy. And when this autophagy is triggered during the fasting process, the body's going to start removing damaged cells, organelles, breaking down pathogens, proteins that are dysfunctional, and as a result, reducing inflammation and promoting longevity. Whenever fasting, we have to look at when we are going to enter into autophagy, and this typically happens at the 17-hour mark. Now, there's reason to believe that those who are metabolically healthy can get into autophagy sooner than those who are metabolically unhealthy, as in you're facing pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. But on average, we can put 17 hours as a good marker as to when your body will enter into autophagy when fasting. So when this autophagy is activated, it's going to help remove these toxins, cellular waste. It's going to reduce the risk of neurodegeneration, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, which so many people face today, and even dementia. It also is going to support tissue regeneration. And it's for this reason that whenever I face any ailment in my life, I always turn to fasting. It's something that has proven to help me, whether it's a joint ache, a skin rash, or a gastrointestinal issue. And I'm going to break down all the details as to why this is the case, and also make the case as to why, if you start fasting, you will dramatically reduce the risk of all of the major diseases that so many people suffer from today. Now, the next major thing that fasting is going to help with in your body is helping you reduce inflammation. Now, inflammation is a massive problem. The diets and the lifestyles that we live today are so pro-inflammatory that most people are suffering greatly with inflammation. Whenever you're fasting, you're going to start reducing pro-inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, TNF-alpha, and as a result of that, you're going to find that inflammation dramatically reduces. You're going to find that
Hello?
Hello, this is Chester.
Hi. I'm very confused.
This is Chester's Pool Hall. On
Yes.
Here's the name.
Yes. Can you fill me in on what's going on?
What are you talking about? You want a table?
So, from my understanding, can you explain to me what's going on?
What are you talking about?
The CPD called the Hyatt Regency in downtown Cleveland, and they called my supervisor, and that Powell said, pull phone records and get them over right now.
Okay, well, we are located here on 50th and May in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. So,
No, I understand that. Hello?
yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Alright. So, from my understanding, someone staying at the hotel called Ed Powell, and Ed Powell called the phone number that's calling you. So, my supervisor, he said, can I have the number to the hotel? And I said, yes. And he said, pull phone records and get them over right now. So,
The observations off the East Coast, we talked to other people in those squadrons with similar capabilities, and they were describing it the same way. The humans do. Same color, same, everything.
And does that seem indicative of things that you only see on the East Coast?
So far as I know, but again, I wish there was a better place to answer these questions, but part of the reason I don't have answers is because we've just refused to look at this for so long, right? There's just never been data collection so far as, I know. And so, that would be, these would be questions we could answer that if we had started looking at this 20 years ago, perhaps, that we could be answering now. But, we have to collect a lot of data. And, it's interesting because we have really two ways of doing that, right? There's leveraging the world's best sensors, things of that nature, through the U.S. government. And of course, all that is always going to be classified, and it's always going to be different. And then, on the other hand, there's really discovery, right? I mean,
This is the most effective treatment that's ever been shown in treating the leading cause of death and disability, which is high blood pressure. It also reduces insulin resistance. It can enhance cognitive capacities, and you also see it affecting things like depression and anxiety. It's called fasting, and there's more. Fasting introduces not just the chance to lose weight, it also mobilizes visceral fat, which is the fat around the belly and the organs, which is giving off inflammatory products that's causing heart disease, cancer, diabetes, And many people are maintaining higher visceral fat than what they should be. It's actually got 40 years helping people get healthy. And I can tell you that I think you should be fasting every day.
So tell me about that then. But also, isn't the game here just to not eat as much?
Well, here's the problem.
Dr. Alan Goldhammer is a pioneering physician
He spent his life helping thousands of people reverse chronic disease, eliminate medication,
and reclaim their health using one of the most ancient healing tools known to humanity.
Today, we live in a world designed to make you fat, sick, and miserable, where 76% of people are overweight and obese, and where people think that health comes from pills, potions, and powders. And yet most of us are ignorant of the proven health benefits of fasting. In fact, if you look at all the changes that happen with exercise, they also happen with fasting. Things like increase in BDNF, a neurochemical detected in the brain from Alzheimer's disease.
And what about water fasting?
So people that have not been successful resolving their conditions with medications, including patients with polycystic ovarian syndrome, have been profoundly affected by water fasting. And we'll go through that in this research. But one thing you want to realize is that all human beings have the capacity to fast.
Okay, so let's run through the unique selling points versus any other diet or intervention.
Let's get it.
I see messages all the time in the comments. Dr. Alan Goldhammer. My first question is, who are you and what have you spent the last 4 decades of your life doing and why?
I spent my entire life really focused on one topic.
No. Darkside Hannah Claire in the Kick Chat says the difference in intelligence between Phil and his viewers is huge. Wrong. The difference in intelligence between myself and my haters is huge. Do you understand? There's a difference. My viewers, my actual people who are here to enjoy my content and chill and engage and have a good time, they're actually quite intelligent because they can see past the nonsense that all these morons on the internet say and perpetrate. But the actual average hater is actually a fucking gun. They can't tie their own shoes. They probably have Velcro shoes just so they can keep them on their feet. You know what I mean? Like their mom probably puts their diaper on in the morning. This is the level of person that doesn't like Darkside Phil.
Old DSP has been up to his usual shenanigans as of late, bitching about trolls and detractors in his chat, playing video games horribly on stream for the world to see, and also playing video games horribly that you, the viewer, can't see. Doing nothing but talking about his money and his finances, drunk calling Wings of Redemption at 3 a.m. What? Yeah, that happened too. Phil was up one night, he was bored, he saw that Wings was streaming, he was drunk, so he decided to give him a call, and then spent the next hour just chatting away with Wings as he sat in bed with his wife. Then eventually, Phil's wife, Kat, woke up, told him to go to bed, and that's the life of Phil. That's the life of the living. Someone that all these trolls are jealous of. When you're sitting there in the middle of the night, you have nothing to do, you're thinking, maybe I should watch a movie. Maybe I should even play a video game. Fuck that. Call Wings of Redemption. And if you're one of these trolls of Darkside Phil, he believes that you are jealous of him. You're jealous of all his success and all the adoring fans that he has. When anyone who watches his streams can tell, nobody who messes with him is jealous in the slightest. They just can't stand the way this guy acts. But you'll hear a whole lot about him ranting about the trolls today, despite Phil saying that he doesn't care about them and won't have any attention. It's always sad with Phil, but he'll make sure to come on here day in and day out and talk about how great his life is and how much all of his detractors suck. Maybe at the end of this video you'll agree with him, but I guarantee you probably won't.
Your detractors applaud unhinged behavior like that spammer, but they would condemn you to hell if you ever did anything close to that. They're hypocrites. Of course they're not. Again, there is no narrative of theirs that makes sense or is based in reality. Their narratives are DSP bad, so we make content on DSP to say he bad and we get view from dummy. It's a caveman's mentality. It's an armpit scratching, knock 2 rocks together to make a spark to start a fire and cook your dinner mentality. They're morons. They're cavemen. Okay, these are not, intellectual geniuses that we're dealing with. These are the lowest dregs of society who do this shit on the internet. So, yeah, they're really dumb. They have no actual arguments. The things that they do are insanely unhinged and crazy, but that's okay as long as we're messing with DSP when we're doing the crazy thing. What? No, it's not. No, it's really not.
The crazy thing in question is just someone spamming your chat. I get it, it's annoying. I'll ban people if they spam too, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, all of you are just dumb. You're dum-dums. Like you all have rocks in your head. You can't tie your shoes. He's so mad about these detractors, and he wants to believe that all of them are just hapless, like they're losers. They can't do anything themselves. And Phil, this is what people accuse you of. And you say, oh, none of it's grounded in reality or anything like that. Dude, I saw you playing the Virtual Boy on stream the other day while not showing the gameplay and just going, oh, this is so cool, guys. Isn't this so fun? Like, Phil, your stream's making you come off as a man-child. And I think you're trying to project that onto all these trolls and say, you act like that. You say they don't have any, they don't have any basis or any merit for the things they throw at you. Dude, you treat your chat like shit, they call you out for it. You dropped hundreds of thousands of dollars on WWE champions, they called you out for it. All of these things that people call you out for do have merit. Just because you don't want to acknowledge them doesn't mean they don't exist. You're like more people that Phil, I guess the word is locale. More locales want to say, oh, people only make videos on me because it gets mad. People only make videos on me. Oh, PSP bad. Oh, this person bad. Oh yeah, if you're a piece of shit, people are going to make videos on you and call you out. Pretty cut and dry, Phil. And people especially don't like it when you're somebody like you who can sit here and say that you're all about fun and positivity and being entertaining for your fans, when that's just their blatant lie. Anyone who's watched your stream even for a small bit of time will hear you bitching about trolls and go, man, this guy is insufferable. He comes off way worse than these people. Just listen to Phil in this clip here.
I've already explained, I'm not answering any idiot in the kick chat because I've already explained this a million times, and if you're too dense to understand it, then fuck you. I can't help you to be smart. I'm not here to educate you. Your parents should have done that, or maybe school. I'm not here to be your dad and tell you how to be smart, so I'm just going to ignore your nonsense. Arexidev just did a £2 super chat and says, I won't be able to eat tomorrow, but I'm glad to support. Well, the truth is, Arexidev, if you were going to only be able to buy a £2 meal, it wasn't going to be good anyway. You might as well just go to the dirt. So thank you for the first super chat of the day. Appreciate that. Thanks for $2, stupid. Another comment I'm definitely not going to read, but I'll gladly accept your money. Thank you so much.
And it's like, you don't get why the trolls say what they do. You don't get why people call you like a money-hungry bastard on YouTube. Especially when you do shit like this. The person gave you $2, and you're just like, haha, what a dumbass, but I'll gladly take your money. Well, Phil, if you hate what this guy says so much and you won't read it, then tell him, dude, charge it back. I don't want to read that, charge it back. But let's be honest, these people donating to you saying this shit, these are not detractors, nor are these trolls. These are simply whales. These are people who line Phil's pockets one way or another. It doesn't matter if you're being mean or not. I guarantee you, no honest to God DSP detractor is sending him money to get under his seat. Because you're not going to. At the end of the day, all Phil cares about is the money he gets. Look at the stream right here on screen right now. Phil says that he doesn't ask for donations or have a tip goal anymore, but what's that right there? The King's Tax, of course, showing just how much money he's made on any given night. And if he doesn't hit his $150 goal, he's salty, he stays around on stream just hoping he can get some more donations coming in. He says there's no goal on it, but he just reworded it. There's absolutely still a goal. He'll stick around and try to hit it every night. And thankfully, recently, he's been missing it a lot. When the King's Tax is below $150, he blames the game. He blames bad turnout from people who usually give him money. He never blames himself for this. Man, maybe I was just fucking bored tonight, which 9 times out of 10 is the most likely reason why this is going down.
When we get DSP tries at Olive Garden, I would like to hear your opinion on Americanized Italian. Would you like? Here's my opinion on Americanized Italian. It fucking sucks. It's terrible. My wife and I went to Olive Garden once ever. All right, once. Many years ago. It was terrible. The pasta was bland, oily, disgusting. Okay? Well, here's what was good. The soup was okay, and you know they don't make it there. It's pre-made in a factory in mass batches. They just warm it up. The soup was okay. The breadsticks were okay. That was it. That was all we liked. The main course that came out was disgusting. We hated it. And we never went back. After that, we were like, oh, we're never going back. So that's why I haven't done Olive Garden. I'm not too keen on the idea of delivery pasta. I don't think the delivery pasta would be very good, quite frank. especially since you know, it's already bad, and now you're gonna deliver it. It's probably gonna be like mush, right? So there you go.
And again, it's clips like this right here where Phil will just shit all over Olive Garden when at the same time, man, you've seen his wife's cooking. You know you're eating on a normal night, Phil. Olive Garden would be a treat compared to that. Maybe you don't like it though. Maybe you are genuine in your opinion. You don't want to order no Olive Garden. Well, you're still the same guy who says that all of your streams are fun and positive. If I clicked on a fun and positive stream, that's the label you put on it, and all you're doing is bitching about Olive Garden, I'd click right off. This is just one creator to another thing. I do my own show. I bitch about food like onions all the time, but I'm not sitting here saying that people come to me with fun and positivity in their entertainment. This is the same guy who will say that, oh, drama gets views. That's why people cover me. It's all drama, drama, drama. And then when Phil's views started to dry up a few months ago, he did a stream talking about low-tier God and Wings of Redemption and reacting to them and shit. When drama fits Phil, he'll use it to his advantage, or at least try to. But God forbid any detractor tries to do it to him.
Someone whose name actually I feel is offensive because they're saying toxic things, but then they're using the name Jesus in the chat, says, you lie about everything, why would we believe you? Well, see, that's the thing. If you think that I lie about everything, why would you ever ask me a question, right? Why would you even be here? There's no point. So, I mean, who's the real loser here?
That would be you, Phil. Still, you know, even if people are there calling you the biggest liar ever, which you just admitted to being, that would make you the big loser. Just because they're sitting here asking you questions, doesn't really mean anything about them. They're just shocked that the biggest liar of all time is here alone. They probably just want to see, can we actually get the truth out of this guy? You can say that people are being ignorant, maybe, because they just don't know that they're talking to the biggest liar of all time, and you're like, why would you expect to get the truth out of me? But everyone knows the way you operate, Phil. Trolls will call you out for anything they want, and you'll always push it off and go, no, that's not true. No, that's just a lie. That's a half-truth or shit like that. You just can't get accountability for anything. People say you're being toxic here in the chat. Oh, really? Really? I'm not being toxic. How am I toxic? You know, it's clear in clips like we're showing here, but Phil will never acknowledge that because he lives in his own little fantasy world, thinks that he is always right and everyone else is always wrong. And I want to say this too, for someone who complains so much about detractors and people saying untrue shit, if you're going to let people talk shit to you for the almighty dollar and then go, oh, it's okay in that way, no. Then they're allowed to call you out in any circumstance. Doesn't matter if they give you money or not. But there's still weirdos, as I mentioned before, who will pay Phil to talk shit to him. And in that case, you're not owning Phil in any way. You're like, listen to his reaction right here. He wouldn't give a shit.
What happened? Why did we ban this guy? He sent me more money. Hold on, let me take a look at it. The message is deleted, but he's not banned. Just his message was deleted. What does the message say? Damn it. Oh, here we go. Real Irish did another $5 super chat since we lie about everything. There you go. Thanks for $5. For the record, we don't have to remove messages like that. We can keep them because these people keep paying me, so that's cool. Please keep paying me. I mean, I'm not ever gonna complain about that. You can say dumb shit and pay me for it as much as you want. That's right. Everything I say is a lie anyway, so it doesn't matter. Every single word ever out of my mouth since I was born was a lie. I was born, and they patted me on the back. I started breathing. I said, "Go go gaga." They said, "You liar!" And my nose said, "Boo." Very nice.
Wow, that's Phil's brand of humor right there. I'm gonna be honest with you. You're trying to own this whole "you liar" thing. Like, oh yeah, I guess I lie about everything. You guys are right. Ha ha ha. You won't even acknowledge the comment this guy left. If you're not a liar, read it aloud. Let the chat know what you're talking about instead of saying, oh no, you sent me money, so I'll just allow it to happen. Well, if he's sending you money to do it, then read it out, Phil. There shouldn't be a problem with that, right? It's not like you're lying about what this guy's saying, right? It couldn't be that. And then someone sent something to Phil, which actually got an answer out of him that I've been wondering for quite a long time. You see, when Phil laughs about things or tries to tell jokes or even tries to insult people, it's always like schoolyard bullshit, like obscenities for the sake of saying them, like, hey, kiss my balls, you can lick my butt, shit like that. Like it's never an actual insult. It's just like South Park shit from the early years. And somebody asked Phil and said, hey, what's with the random strings of shit you say? Is it like angry video game nerd shit? And as soon as that was said, I was like, oh yeah, that probably is where Phil gets his humor from. But then of course he sees a way that he can try to twist things and says, yeah, well that's where I got my whole fucking identity from. Back when I would go to the fighting game tournaments, I would just say crazy shit. I would try to drum up interest, you know, you were always just a dick, and even the people in the fighting game community saw you as such, and that's why they didn't like you either.
Does the weird string of expletives derive from AVGN? I'm thinking of you saying sending a spoon so you can eat shit for this instance, or is that inspired by something else? To some extent, like, when I was in the Street Fighter community, I was always the big shit talker, okay? I was the guy who always was being offensive and you know, talking nonsense to everyone in the community. Now, people knew that, but people who knew me in real life knew that it was all an act. It was just a facade. It was me trying to create interest and hype for event. Like if DSP talked shit and then went to a tournament and there would be a hype match against the guy I talked shit about, that would hype up the tournament. People would actually want to go just to see that match, to either see me fail miserably and get my balls kicked in, or to actually see if I can put my money where my mouth is. People liked that about the old school smash mouth Street Fighter stuff, okay? Then when I became a YouTuber, I was a fan of like AVGN, and what I tried to do was take that old kind of, oh, I'm the baddest motherfucker in the Street Fighter community attitude, combine it with the over-the-top offensive commentary of what AVGN would do, and become a live commentator on gameplay by combining the two. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you're like a pro wrestler, which Phil is a big pro wrestling fan, that's something you always hear about those guys. You know, you take your personality and you dial it to 11. But Phil, you were already a prick, and then you came to YouTube with the same mentality that you had when you were playing Street Fighter and all that, and nothing changed. The fact of the matter is, this person asked if AVGN like inspired your humor, and basically all that stuff you just said was all to say, yes, he did. But I wouldn't say the angry video game nerd inspired you in any way as a YouTuber. You're just being yourself, Phil. This is you. All these years later, you're still the salty fucking Street Fighter player you were all those years ago. You've just gotten older and you decided, maybe now, you know, I don't want to deal with all the bullshit, so I'll just say I'm fun and positive. You don't do anything fun and positive, you just say it.
What is it that gets the view? What is it that gets the attention and the popularity on YouTube, right? Is it saying, oh, someone actually is good. Here's the good things they've done. Here's the truth about them exposed, showing that they're not the bad person that everyone thinks they are. No, that doesn't get any views or attention at all. Zero. You don't know what gets views and attention on YouTube? Drama, hate, exposing someone for being a scammer, exposing someone for lies and cheating and stealing and debaucherous, acts and horrible things. You know what I mean? The downfall is what gets the views and attention on YouTube.
Yes, Phil, and you've tried to dabble in that style of content as well. You know, I brought it up earlier, the LTG reaction stream you did. There's nothing wrong with calling out low-tier God. Matter of fact, I've done it myself on my show. A lot of people have done it. You yourself have done it, Phil. What's wrong with that? You're just not funny when you do it. You sat there, it was boring. Maybe if you looked at the camera and were like, hey, Dale, pay your fucking child support, people would have been like, oh shit, here we go. But you didn't do that. But now you want to sit here and say, oh, that's all that gets the views, and it's not poor old guys like Phil who are doing good things in games that people aren't. What good things are you doing? I've watched tons of your streams. I'll never let holy shit, everything great taking down that boss. It's always a struggle, but I do get what you're saying. If someone were to make a video called all of DSP's big triumphs, it would be Phil going, yes, we took down this boss, or yeah, finally we beat this person we've been fighting for hours. I don't know. But there would be nothing funny there. What's funny is videos like this where you're like, oh, my trolls are this, my trolls that. All right, stupid. You don't even know what you're talking about. Everything you say about me has no merit. It's all fake. It's all lies. Like, people just, they see that and they're like, this dude's insane. Of course, that's more watchable than you just, all right, we did it, guys. Like, it's the same thing over and over again. Granted, so is you bitching about the trolls, but still funny.
The redemption arcs don't do well. It's the actual downfall that do well. You see?
Well, hold on, Phil. I gotta stop you because that's where with you it's interesting. You know, there is no redemption arc. There is no, well, here comes the rise.